So one of the suggestions that Aaron Schatz made was the Rams should trade away Matt Stafford and bring in Sam Darnold. Let's just live in the Stafford of it for a moment. You're headed to Indy.
Yeah.
What is going on with Stafford and the Rams?
The Rams and Stafford are trying to figure out a new contract, and it's still possible they do and that they keep him there. But if they don't, then I believe that they will trade him, and there are teams that are going to be interested. And, Darnold would be one of the possible pivots if they could get a deal done with Minnesota, or if Minnesota lets Sam Darnold hit the open market. So we're getting to Indy today. A lot of the front office people are getting there today. Tomorrow, Matthew Stafford. This dragged all through the offseason last year. I don't get the impression that the Rams want that to happen again. I think they'd like an answer sooner rather than later, i.e. sometime in the next couple of days, so they can figure out what their quarterback plan is if it's not Stafford. So this is something you could see new. You can't officially do a trade until March 12th when the league year starts, but you could agree to the parameters of a trade, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was news on that at some point.
Didn't Stafford get traded in February last time, right?
Yes.
I mean, these things clearly happen. So Tim Hasselbeck, here's the part of this that I find fascinating. I can't prove, well, first of all, let's say this for sure. The Rams played the Eagles tougher than anybody else did in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And while I can't prove this statement, I believe if that game hadn't been played in a blizzard, they would have won. Stafford remains right now one of the, loosely 6 or 7 best quarterbacks in the NFL. The Rams are kind of this close. Why on earth are they considering trading him away?
Yeah, I don't know that this is necessarily their idea. It's probably Matthew Stafford looking around saying, I'm underpaid at the position right now, making that very clear to the organization, and the organization saying, look, you're 36 or 37, however old he is.
He just turned 37. He's 37, Tim, just turned it.
Go check out the market, because we love you. You've been a warrior for us. But we also have to be careful because you're 37 years old. So check out what the market is and then come back to us so that we can figure out if we can do a 5-year deal with you at 37 years old. That's what I think is happening. I don't think it's the Rams saying, hey, how can we reset at quarterback? I think it's more, hey, they're put in this situation. Now, they might have to do it if the market is really high for Stafford, which it potentially could be.
I understand that, but the Rams of all teams who are the first ones to jump in on any trade and sign any free agent and all that stuff. If you're not paying this guy, who are you paying?
Well, they changed their model, right? Remember, it was F them picks, but now they've been building and drafting through the draft and building this team pretty good. The reality is, it makes a lot of sense because over the last couple of years, we've been hearing Matthew Stafford flirt with retirement. So really that just tells you that he wanted some long-term security, and now he's looking at the market, looking at Jalen Hurts, looking at guys making $60 million, and he believes that he needs to get it. When, as a player that got paid old later in his career, considered the life expectancy, what it usually comes down to is 1 or 2 more years and guaranteed money and upfront money. So they're fighting probably for 1 or 2 years, where you talk about if you send them to Minnesota, Minnesota is a place that has $59 million in salary cap space. So they can absorb a contract like that and give him what he wants to try and win in the short term, where the Rams are trying to go back and try and build in a long-term type of fashion.
They've kind of been going year to year with Stafford.
Right.
And I think there's a sense now that maybe Stafford doesn't want to keep going year to year, that he'd like something like whatever. Tim said 5 years, maybe 3-year, 4-year, whatever length deal it is. He's supposed to make $27.5 million. That's less than half what you're talking about. You don't need to get to 60, but get me somewhere respectable, right? So I think that's where the push-pull is. And again, they could figure it out. The Rams and Matthew Stafford have been a very good marriage, and it could very well continue. But it sounds like it's going to be tougher to get to a resolution than it was last year, when they just kind of took money from future years and moved it up into 2024 and guaranteed some. By definition, there's not as much to bring forward anymore.
And why it makes sense for Minnesota is because Kevin O'Connell's there. So it's a familiarity.
You're putting Stafford in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of familiarity. I think you can do a sign and trade with Sam Darnold, which would be a cheaper option. Sam Darnold's not going to ask for $60 million a year. He can't.
If you put Matthew Stafford in Minnesota next year, watch out. Right now, I would say that would become, I might go so far as to say I think that would become the team to beat in the entire NFC next year if Matthew Stafford. Darnold was good. Stafford is a whole other level of good and experienced and in that dome and everything else.
Offense.
We'll talk about them as we go. Okay. All right, so that leaves us with the really big story in the NFL. at the Combine this week. Bear in mind, the Combine is where everyone goes to Indianapolis, including Dan Graziano, who's going there today. And this is where all the wheeling and dealing goes on over, for what I'm told, a lot of drinking. But I never participate in any of that myself. No. But that's a whole other conversation. Is Matthew Stafford going to wind up leaving the Rams, and why is this week so critical?
He could wind up leaving the Rams, and the reason this week is so critical is because the Rams are going to want to know what their plan is at quarterback if they can't get a deal done with Matthew Stafford. Just to reset, they were able to keep him happy last year by adjusting his contract to bring it a little more in line with the quarterback market by moving some money from future years into 2024. Now, it doesn't feel like that resolution is going to be what solves this year. It seems like what Matthew Stafford would want is more of a commitment, maybe a couple of years of guarantees. So if the Rams aren't willing or able to do that, then I believe they will trade him to a team that is. Matthew Stafford and his agent have had permission for a while now to talk to other teams and find out what the market is for him in terms of a contract. And if he finds something he likes somewhere else, be it, the New York Giants, the Pittsburgh Steelers, whoever, and the Rams aren't willing to match it, then I believe the Rams will work with him to facilitate a trade to that team. So I think the reason this week is critical is because everyone's figuring out their quarterback plan right now. What's the market for Sam Darnold? What's the market for Matthew Stafford? What's the market for Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields? The Rams would be left behind if they let this drag out into the offseason like it did last year.
Tim Hasselbeck, Matthew Stafford just turned 37 years old. He is dramatically underpaid, as Graziano just hinted to, based upon what the top-level quarterbacks in the NFL are getting paid. And what I want to bring up here, to be clear, is that he is that, right? Matthew Stafford, regardless of his age, shows no signs of slowing down. He's not a player who's ever depended on his athleticism. He's depended on that arm, which candidly, he'll be able to throw a ball through a car wash when he's 60 years old. So I don't understand for the life of me why the Rams wouldn't be willing to pay him whatever anybody is willing to pay him.
Well, I think they may be. They may just be saying, look, you're saying your value's this. Go find out what the market says, and then we'll pay you that. Like, that might be why they're allowing him to go see what his value is, because you're right. At 37 years old, the physical skills really haven't diminished. And typically in free agency, what are the two biggest factors are age and injury history. I mean, like, that's, that really, directs where the money goes. So the fact that he's old isn't great, but the fact that he's still playing at a high level and has been healthy or been a warrior and played through the, bumps and bruises he's had, would lead you to believe that somebody would invest in him. And so, Graz said it earlier, and I think that it's important. Like, it's the guaranteed money to put him over the next 2-3 years, whatever it is, to put him on par with the guys that are playing at a top 10 level in the NFL.
Bart.
And the problem is, like, every player we know, thinks that if they've had a great career, they should be afforded the opportunity to steal on the back end of their contract on their way out. That's just the reality of it, right? So he probably wants 4 years. They probably want to offer 2 to 3, because they understand the analytics is going to tell them when he gets to the age of 40, maybe he breaks down and maybe they have to pay some of them young, talented defensive linemen that they have. And that's going to be the back. So, I think it makes sense if they decide to say, hey, we're going to trade for a guy like Sam Darnold, maybe do a sign and trade, and maybe he ends up in Minnesota, who's in a period where they can try and win now before they have to pay Addison and other players.
I get it. I don't think I'm overstating this. The Rams are a legitimate Super Bowl contender with Matthew Stafford. They played the Eagles tougher than anybody else did last year. To me, to give that up right now would be a stunning decision.
How's it going, everybody? Villa Sports Network here. Just want to thank you guys for your support on the channel. Thank you guys for watching the video. Hope you all enjoyed it. Also want to kind of remind you to don't forget to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment on the video if you like as well. But regardless of the fact, thank you again for your support, and hope to see you on the next video.